It's 5 minutes with me.
Hello, welcome to 5 Minutes with me. So years ago, I was hosting a youth ministry conversation at an event in England with a panel of the leading voices in British youth ministry. And I described a handful of different approaches to youth ministry and asked the panel to respond. And I remember very clearly when Pete Ward, who's like a godfather of youth ministry in the UK, heavily and loudly sighed and said, there are really only two kinds of youth ministries: inside out youth ministries and outside in youth ministries. He meant simply that there were those more interested in discipleship and those more passionate about evangelism. While I remember thinking and still think that there's likely more complexity and nuance to the differences in youth ministries, Pete's words have stuck with me over the years because they do seem to sum up the vast majority of youth group approaches. When thinking of small groups in youth ministry, it's important to know why you exist, why you bother meeting together. You might come up with your own description or some combination of descriptions, but if you don't think this through, you'll end up defaulting to something that's less than helpful. I want to identify four approaches to small groups that I've seen most often, and I wonder if you would think about which one resonates with you, which is most reflective of the approach you're currently using, and is there some change that you should step into? Number one, I'm going to call it education. Traditionally, youth ministry sprang up out of the Sunday school movement, which often became the Christian education department at a church. And that name summarizes the approach well. Small groups with this focus are primarily concerned with educating teenagers in the Christian faith. If you're not sure whether this is your approach, consider the content and form. In other words, if the content, at least what you hope the content would be, is focused on transferring truth to students, helping them to increase in knowledge, then this is probably your approach. And if your small group times are primarily teacher-centric or focused on the information given by the small group leader, it's a strong indicator that your group has an education focus. That's not a bad thing. I'm not here to slam it. It can, however, end up feeling a lot like school for teenagers and be a turnoff. A dark side of this approach is that it can tend to focus only on the minds of students and the information they can grasp. But living as a follower of Jesus is a whole person activity: mind, heart, emotion, and behavior. Second primary focus for some groups is more what I would call Bible study. Closely related to the previous focus, Bible study focus is still mostly educational, but instead of relying primarily on instruction about beliefs, this purpose is more interested in helping teenagers discover and understand biblical truth by actually digging into the Bible. Here's what's great about this approach. The Bible is God's primary means of revelation to us, and most teenagers today are fairly clueless about the Bible, the truths of Scripture, even the stories that speak to us. Bible reading among Christians has declined significantly in the past few decades. In fact, a recent poll showed that 20%, 1 in 5 of Bible readers, have stopped reading the Bible over the span of a generation. Another study found that 1 in 5 churchgoers say that they're getting the help they need. They're not getting the help that they need in understanding the Bible. A Bible study focused small group has the opportunity to reverse these damaging trends by offering Bible engagement. This focus can be amazing, particularly when it helps teenagers engage Scripture. What I've seen is that most small groups that say they're Bible study focused are really an educational model with the teacher dispensing information and very little actual interaction with Scripture for the teenagers. A third approach is what I'm going to call community or therapeutic. This is probably the most common approach or focused for youth ministry small groups. The hope is to create an authentic community, a place where students can be honest about the real stuff in their lives, including the integration of their faith into daily life. I added the word therapeutic in this description, not as a negative, but as an indication that these kinds of groups often provide a kind of semi-therapy for the trauma that teenagers experience. There's great value in this approach to small groups. In fact, it's probably the purpose that I most closely align with in my own small group leadership style. The caution on this approach is that it's very easy to get lazy and have the group time amount to nothing more than shooting the breeze. Without some focused intentionality, particularly in bringing up spiritual subjects, the group could end up enjoying each other but not accomplishing more than a fun night of hanging out each week. The fourth option that I'm going to give you is what I'm calling mini youth group. Most youth ministry small groups focus on one purpose, like those listed above, but the mini youth group approach throws the net wider. This approach views the small group as a youth ministry, kind of as a youth ministry of its own, with the small group leader acting as a youth pastor of sorts. Think of all the functions and purposes of a youth group. Really, they're the same as the functions and purposes of a church. You might create a list that includes worship, teaching, evangelism, discipleship, fellowship, serving, and more. Well, the mini youth group approach is a small group, mini youth group approach to small groups embraces all of those. This is probably the most rare, but it's worth considering. Think of the impact on your group going on a mission trip as a group. Or what if worship, not just singing, by the way, became a regular part of your small group experience? In a sense, this kind of small group attempts to live out what it means to be the church in the context of a small group. And that can be really powerful. Hey, you might know that the Youth Cartel's main thing, the thing that we founded ourselves on is the youth ministry coaching program. It is a year-long leadership development, a whole life leadership development program for youth workers in a cohort approach with 10 youth workers in a group that meets on a learning journey 6 times over the course of a year. And man, we've had 800 people go through it now. And I can't tell you how consistently I see significant transformation in the lives and the ministries of the people who are a part of it. It's such an honor to be a part of it and to walk together with youth workers. We're always trying to fill cohorts. Let me tell you some of the ones we're looking to fill right now. We've got a Western Pennsylvania, like Pittsburgh area one that's getting pretty close to being filled. That one's going to be a hybrid cohort with 3 in-person meetings and 3 online meetings, which makes it more accessible for a lot of people and also a little bit less cost to it. A Sioux Falls, South Dakota cohort. I know that sounds random. There were lots of reasons why we tried to start one there. That one's been lagging, lingering at about half filled for a while, and would really love to see that one move forward. Again, that one is also that hybrid approach, which means it's a little less money and 3 in-person meetings, so you could potentially travel further. We've got one in Springfield, Illinois that's the same. We've got a Raleigh, North Carolina cohort forming and one in North Georgia, Atlanta area. We're thinking about reopening a San Diego one and a Denver one. All of those, just kind of let me know. Reach out to me. If you have any questions about this program, I'd love to connect with you. It's just the coolest thing ever. Hope you'll consider joining us.
The Youth Cartel Podcast Network.